I'd been away on business for 3 weeks finalizing a major contract that would secure my company's future for the next 5 years. The entire flight home from Seattle, I couldn't stop thinking about getting back to the ranch my grandfather's legacy passed down through 3 generations of the Morrison family, so you can imagine my confusion when I pulled up to find a bright orange sold sign plastered across our wrought iron entrance gate. My foot hit the brake so hard the rental car's tires squealed there. In my driveway was a moving truck. 2 men were carrying boxes toward my front door while a woman directed them with animated hand gestures. My blood pressure spiked as I threw the car into park and stormed toward them. "Excuse me, what the hell are you doing on my property?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. The woman turned, clutching a clipboard to her chest. "Oh, you must be the previous owner. I'm Sandra Hutchinson. We just closed on the property yesterday." Through the HOA auction, such a steal at $25,000, I felt the world tilt sideways. Auction? What HOA? This ranch has been in my family for 70 years. There's no HOA here. Sandra's face went pale, but the Riverside Estates HOA said this property was delinquent on dues. They had all the paperwork, the lien, the notices, everything. That's when I knew Karen Henderson, the self-appointed queen of Riverside Estates, the suburban development that bordered the eastern edge of our property line. But our ranch wasn't part of their neighborhood. We were a full mile outside their boundaries, surrounded by agricultural zoning. My grandfather had made damn sure of that when developers started sniffing around in the 80s. The Morrison Ranch sprawled across 45 acres of prime Texas Hill Country. My grandfather, William Morrison, had purchased it in 1954 with his savings from the Korean War. He built the main house with his own hands, raised cattle, and later transitioned to boarding horses when the economics shifted. When he passed 5 years ago, the ranch became mine, free and clear. No mortgage, no liens, no debts of any kind. I'd maintained it meticulously, honoring his memory by keeping every fence post straight and every pasture green. The property taxes were automatically paid from a dedicated account I'd set up. Everything was in perfect order, or so I thought. Karen Henderson had been president of the Riverside Estates HOA for the past 3 years. I'd heard stories from friends who lived in the development, stories about fines for grass being half an inch too tall, citations for the wrong shade of beige on a mailbox, and meetings that felt more like congressional hearings than neighborhood gatherings. She ran that HOA like her personal kingdom, and apparently she decided to expand her territory. The first letter had arrived 6 months ago while I was at the ranch. I'd actually laughed when I read it. "Dear homeowner," it began, "following the recent boundary expansion vote by the Riverside Estates HOA board, your property at 4578 Ranch Road now falls within our jurisdiction. Please find enclosed your retroactive dues invoice for the amount of $3,600. I tossed it in the trash, figuring it was some kind of mistake or maybe even a scam. We weren't part of any HOA. Never had been, never would be. The ranch was an unincorporated county land governed by agricultural exemptions. You can't just vote to annex someone's property into your HOA. That's not how property law works. But the letters kept coming. The second one claimed I owed fines for fence height violations. Apparently, our 100-year-old split rail fence was 3 and 2 tall according to their standards. The third cited us for livestock noise pollution because our horses had the audacity to neigh in the morning. Each letter was more absurd than the last, and each one went straight into the garbage where it belonged. Then they started arriving via certified mail. I refused to sign for them. Let Karen waste her postage. I thought I had more important things to worry about than her power trip. That was my first mistake, underestimating just how far Karen Henderson would go to satisfy her need for control. What I didn't know was that Karen had been busy behind the scenes. She'd been filing documents with the county, creating a paper trail that made it look like I'd been properly notified of violations and had ignored them. She'd even gone so far as to have someone forge my signature on certified mail receipts. The foundation of her lie was being carefully constructed while I remained blissfully unaware. The quiet auction had taken place while I was in Seattle. No public notice in the newspaper, no posting at the courthouse, nothing that would have alerted me or my attorney, just Karen, her hand-picked board members, and conveniently her brother-in-law, who ran a real estate investment company called LIEN Holdings LLC. They'd auctioned my 45-acre ranch for $25,000 less than the value of the horses in our stable. Sandra Hutchinson, it turned out, was just another victim in this scheme. She and her husband had been told they were getting an incredible deal on distressed property. They'd paid cash to LIEN Holdings, thinking they were making the investment of a lifetime. Now here we all were standing in my driveway trying to make sense of Karen's web of lies. I called my attorney, David Brennan, right there on the spot. "David, I need you at the ranch immediately. Someone's trying to steal my property." While we waited for him to arrive, I convinced Sandra and her movers to hold off On unloading anything else, she was starting to realize something was very wrong with her bargain purchase. David arrived within the hour along with a sheriff's deputy. I'd requested we spent the next 3 hours unraveling the scheme. The fraudulent documents were almost laughable in their boldness: forged signatures, fabricated meeting minutes, and a lien that had been filed with the county using falsified HOA documents. Karen had counted on me not fighting back, or perhaps not discovering the sale until it was too late, but she'd made critical errors. The notary seal on several documents belonged to someone who died 2 years ago. The HOA's own charter clearly showed their boundaries, which ended a full mile from my property line, and most damning of all, the LIEN Holdings LLC that purchased my ranch. It was registered to Karen's brother-in-law, with Karen herself listed as the secondary member. The sheriff's deputy took statements from everyone and immediately opened a criminal investigation. David got on the phone with a judge he knew, seeking an emergency injunction to stop any transfer of the property. By nightfall, we had it. Sandra and her husband, realizing they'd been caught up in a criminal scheme, were more than happy to cooperate with authorities. They just wanted their $25,000 back. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal action. David and his team worked around the clock, uncovering more evidence of Karen's fraudulent activities. It turned out my ranch wasn't her first target. She tried similar schemes with 2 other properties on the outskirts of Riverside Estates, though neither had progressed as far as mine. We also discovered that Karen had been embezzling from the HOA itself, using dues and fines to fund her expansion project. She convinced herself that bringing more properties under HOA control would mean more power and more money flowing through her hands. The actual residents of Riverside Estates had no idea their dues were being used to wage legal warfare against neighboring properties. The investigation revealed forged emails, falsified county documents, and a complex series of transfers designed to obscure the theft. Karen had even gone so far as to create fake violation notices that she claimed had been posted on my property, complete with photoshopped images showing the notices on my gate. The FBI's white-collar crime unit got involved when it became clear this was interstate wire fraud. She'd used online banking to move the money across state lines. 3 months after I'd found that sold sign on my gate, we finally had our day in court. The courtroom was packed with residents from Riverside Estates, neighbors from surrounding properties, and local media who'd caught wind of the story. Karen sat at the defendant's table, no longer the confident HOA president who terrorized a neighborhood, but a woman watching her carefully constructed world collapse. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically: 32 counts of fraud, 18 counts of forgery, conspiracy to commit grand theft, embezzlement. The list went on. When they showed the forged documents on the courtroom screens, several Riverside Estates residents gasped. They recognized their own signatures have been forged on HOA meeting minutes. They'd never seen my testimony was straightforward. I'd never agreed to join any HOA. I'd never received legitimate notice of any violations because my property wasn't under their jurisdiction. The sale of my ranch was fraudulent from start to finish. David presented our evidence piece by piece, building an airtight case that left no room for doubt. Karen's defense attorney tried to argue that she believed she was acting within her authority as HOA president, but that fell apart quickly when the prosecutor showed emails between Karen and her brother-in-law discussing how they'd split the profits from flipping my ranch. One email even joked about how I was too stupid to realize what was happening until it was too late. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal: guilty on all counts. The sale of my ranch was declared null and void. LIEN Holdings was ordered to return the $25,000 to the Huchin sons immediately. Karen was ordered to pay restitution of $250,000 for legal fees and damages, but that was just the civil judgment. The criminal sentencing was where Karen finally broke: 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud and conspiracy, 3 years for embezzlement, to run concurrently, lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board or in any fiduciary capacity. As the judge read the sentence, Karen's face went from red to white to gray. She swayed in her seat, gripping the table for support. "But Your Honor," she stammered, "I was just trying to improve the neighborhood. These properties were bringing down our values with their livestock and their agricultural exemptions. I don't deserve prison. I'm a respected member of the community." The judge's response was ice cold. "Mrs. Henderson, you violated the fundamental property rights of American citizens. You abused a position of trust to enrich yourself and your family. You forged documents, stole money, and attempted to steal land that had been in a family for generations. 8 years is lenient considering the maximum sentence I could impose." The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. Karen let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. 2 federal marshals moved to escort her out, and she turned to look at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This is your fault," she screamed. "If you just paid the dues, Like everyone else, none of this would have happened.